Okay, welcome back, dear viewers. This is episode 4, part 4 of my dive into Lamentations of the Flame Princess core rulebook, Rules and Magic. Today, we are going to have a riveting discussion about Encumbrance. Probably the most um, uh, hated or least liked portion of any RPG. Um, it's boring, typical in the old school version of the world's most popular role-playing game. There's a lot of math. I think back me used like a coin system. Uh, anyway, it just encumbrance sucks. It's not fun. It's not fun to think about, and I congratulate all the OSR game designers out there trying to make it work. Because encumbrance is incredibly important. It creates decision points for the players that will have consequences later on. This actually came up in the latest episode of my Lamentations of Elemental Evil campaign. Um, After checking encumbrance and making sure everyone had it calculated properly, they realized that they were going to run out of food on the journey back. So that is an issue that is lingering while they tackle the moat house. Um, the cool thing, though, is that Lamentations of the Flame Princess knows that encumbrance is not fun and is a bit of a boring snooze fest. And created it is using a slot based system that is a lot easier to calculate and makes things just easier. And I'm just going to quote here from the book. It's a quote: realistically, no one keeps track of such things during a game. Um, and that's true. And that's true. No one does. No one wants to. So I think the slot-based system that Lamentations is using makes a lot of sense. So the basics are essentially one item is placed in a slot. Every 6 items increases your encumbrance points by one. Then you total up all your encumbrance points, consult a chart, and that determines your movement rate. The book expressly states right after that quote that the referee has authority to call an audit of any time in the game to determine and make sure everyone's encumbrance is calculated correctly because it's that important. You got to outrun a monster. You're going to be moving as fast as you can. With depending on what you're carrying, you might have to drop something. You know, um, with my Lamentations game, it took a week on a broken road to get to the moat house. And there's 5 of them, and they had their mule laden with food, and that's pretty much it. I think he's carrying a few other things for one of the characters. And as they traveled, things got lighter because they were eating up the food. So it's that important, and the referee needs to, maintain that and the integrity of it. Um, so calculating the slots and when they're applicable is pretty straightforward. Worn items do not count towards encumbrance. Interestingly, backpack is considered a worn item, so it goes into your non-encumbrant equipment section of the character sheet. Very small single items do not count, um, but multiple small items can count as a slot, take up a slot, like arrows and spikes, iron spikes, that sort of thing. Um, for every 100 coins you're carrying, you're using up a slot. Oversized items, such as a 10-foot ladder or two-handed weapon, automatically count as a single encumbrance point. So you could carry 5 items, right? And that doesn't equal one encumbrance point, but your 6 item would be it might be your two-handed sword, so you have one encumbrance point at that point. So armor chainmail automatically adds one encumbrance point, and of course plate mail is 2. So you can see how this can uh, add up rather quickly. A shield is considered an oversized item. So here's an example: your dwarven tank wearing plate armor and a shield has 3 encumbrance points before you calculate weapons and gear. Good news for a dwarf is that they can ignore the first point of encumbrance, essentially. So, mounts. I really like that James went into some discussion on mounts in Lamentations, and it's a similar. It's actually a lot easier than I've seen in previous editions of this game of D&D. Very, very easy. Use the exact same system, and then he provides some additional rules for, you know, what how a character riding on a horse is going to affect the encumbrance. So you have 5 points for humans and dwarves, 4 for elves, and 3 for halflings. And this is in addition to whatever they're carrying. So our dwarf example, let's say he's carrying, he's got the plate mail, the shield, and carrying 6 items, weapons and gear. So he's got 4 encumbrance points right there. So his war pony is carrying 9 points, including for the dwarf and all the dwarf's gear. Barding adds points, obviously, and then it has their own item chart. It's 5 items will give it another point of cumbrance. So that war pony has got barding, that it adds some points, and then it's got saddlebags filled with gear, additional gear, could give it another point. So that war pony now has maybe 11 points, and that'll affect movement by consulting a chart, just like characters will affect movement when you consult the chart. So, interestingly, and this is I love this because it gives you an idea of how to make this work. Animals pulling a vehicle have a -10 point per axle load. So you first got to calculate the load of the vehicle, and let's say it's a two-wheel, a one-axle cart. It's just got 2 wheels. You'd subtract 10 from that load, and then you'd apply it to the animal, and then from there, you would calculate how far that animal can go in a day. I really like this too. Teamsters packing an animal's load will reduce the encumber points by 5 because they're experts at it, and just underscores the importance of hirelings. I love it. It's great. And then mules are rather special. They automatically move half the speed of a horse, but they subtract 5 points from their load because that's what mules do. They carry stuff. Ponies move at normal speeds but automatically start with 6 points. Not entirely sure why it's not explained, but that's the rule. Okay, so travel is assumed to be an 8-day travel with rest periods. What's interesting, characters can apply their constitution modifier to their per day travel distance on foot, so that might add an extra mile or two. And of course, terrain and weather will modify travel. It's a very simple chart, and it's pretty straightforward. Not a whole lot there you need to worry about. I created like a cheat sheet just to kind of remind myself while I'm running a game. But I really like the rules for Force March. Basically, you add another 4 hours for the travel, and adds 50% to the overall distance, but it does damage to the players and the animals. So I kind of like this. It connects with the idea that hit points are like an abstract concept. It's your endurance. It's not just physical damage. It's mental. It's how much punishment you can take before you're knocked unconscious or killed. So Force March is going to weaken your character. So if they really want to get to the moat house or really want to get to the temple of elemental evil, they can quickly, but they're going to arrive injured and exhausted. Okay, so the equipment lists is pretty cool. I like what he does with the equipment list. He first categorizes them into the three types of items. So normal print items are just simply take up one slot, with the exceptions of the armor. Italicized items are considered non-encumbering, but again, the referee can rule that quantities of these small items do count towards encumbrance. And then if you see bold and italicized items, they're considered oversized. Very simple. He doesn't need to provide all these additional entries to let the referee and player know what encumbrance these items are going to have. It's just simple, just understanding the chart, the equipment list, and you're good to go. Um, so another thing I really like is the equipment list contain two columns for pricing: urban and rural. Some items are only going to be found in the city, and prices are different. So I think that kind of gives a referee a quick reference, quick guide to, well, how is this item that the players are looking for, like a suit of leather armor, going to be different from a city or some poor village out in the middle of nowhere. You're not going to find plate mail out there. Okay, and it might, and the leather armor. Let me take a look here. Leather armor is actually going to be more expensive. So it's a quick and easy means of adjudicating that. And of course, at character creation, all gear is available, and you just use the least expensive option. Um, okay, this section of the book goes into the weapons and armor with real briefly. It's not an exhaustive list, and it uses weapon categories as I have listed here. So you could have a small dagger, a small hammer, a small sword, I suppose. You can have a great hammer, a great axe, that sort of thing. Silver weapons, of course, are going to cost 10 times the amount and risk breakage. There's only three types of armor: leather, chain, and plate. And this is where you learn that unarmored characters have an AC of 12. So we're going to get into combat eventually, but it makes combat a little bit more brutal, but I guess I would say realistic too. Um, and emphasizes the importance of the fighter and their specialty as a warrior. Here too, things do get a little crunchy. And if you're a big fan of simplicity like I am, this makes things a little bit more challenging. You just got to remember these. So when you're reading these entries, he uses the phrase unadjusted AC, and that just means when you're looking at armor and shield and not including any other modifiers. Okay, so you have the cestus, which is like these brass knuckle type punching weapons. You have a negative hit. Those unadjusted armors of 15 or higher. This makes a lot of sense when you think about it. And I like how this crunch is put in there. You may have seen in earlier editions of Dungeons and Dragons where they have weapon and armor modification tables, and they can get pretty intricate and involved. This what he does here keeps it very simple, and it's just like these handful of weapons that have sort of like an effect, or are modified based on the armor class of the opponent. Got to get out there. Target considered grapple and takes d6 per round. They have to make saving throw. Or no, I'm sorry, that's the man catcher that has the saving throw. Um, the lance can use it one-handed on horseback. Otherwise, it's considered a polearm, so it's two-handed. Um, and as a polearm, when you're using it as a polearm, you get a +1 to hit unadjusted AC of 16 plus. I think that's pretty historically accurate, right? That's what the polearm was used for, to take down armored guys when they have like the hook on the end of it. And I really like what he did with the rapier here too. Rapier does decent damage. D8, so it's like a normal or a medium sword, but because it is like a rapier, it's a thin weapon. It's gonna be weaker against those who have significant armor. Of course, you got your spear, set to receive charge, second rank attack, staff. He notes it must be used with two hands. I'm not sure why that was necessary. Perhaps there's a lot of people out there thinking they can wield the staff with one hand. Um, but to me, it's always been two hands, but it is what it is. And then here he goes in through a little bit of what the great medium, minor, and small item or weapons are. And the only ones you really got to note are the great weapons are considered oversized. So that's going to be 1 point of encumbrance right off the bat. Minor weapons like a dagger or a small little knife is going to have a -2 to hit unadjusted AC of 15 or greater. And then there's the whip. Ineffective against anyone wearing essentially more than leather armor. Um, or I should say, any armor, because base AC of leather is 14. So go ahead and whip people, but if they're wearing armor, it's not going to do a whole lot. Goes into the ranged weapon rules here as well. So longbows and heavy crossbows are considered oversized. So again, that's 1 point of encumbrance, and gives the range penalties here. I'm going to cover firearms in a separate video, so don't worry, I'm going to get to that. And then light crossbows fire every other round, and heavy crossbows fire every 3 rounds. But what's interesting, they ignore armor class. Now, I'm not entirely sure if the base armor class would be 12 or if you can reduce it below 12. I think I would use the base as the as sort of like the stopping point, but you'll see with firearms they ignore the first 5 AC points. That makes firearms really really useful against armored opponents. So, and the crossbow as well. So, but yeah, so that's ranged weapons, and that's it. So that's encumbrance and equipment, everyone. It's simple. I like it. There's almost no math involved. You're not going to have to count, how many coins a bag weighs or a helmet weighs, or you're not certainly not going to have to worry about ounces and pounds. You got simple rules for mounts and wagon loads. Love it. And the equipment list and the encumbrance rules are printed on the inside of the cover of the book for quick reference. And the weapon categories are pretty simple, with a few crunchy options to kind of add to a player's tactics, in combat, and maybe even appeal to a certain combat style they want their, character to have. So, so that's it. Encumbrance and equipment. Hopefully that wasn't boring, because I do think James's approach to this makes a lot of sense, and it makes encumbrance easy and almost fun to think about when you're running the game. I certainly had fun with our overland travel in episode 4 of Lamentations of Elemental Evil, which was just posted yesterday. So check that out if you're into actual plays. I'll have a link to my blog down below. Please check that out. I try to publish something every week, my thoughts on stuff, game reviews, that sort of thing. And that's it. So thanks for watching. Hit like and subscribe and the bell icon if you're so inclined. And I'll catch you all later, guys. Thanks.